Good afternoon. We'll now hear from the NATO Secretary General, Mr. Mark Rutte.
Yes, good afternoon. Good to see you. Over the next 2 days, NATO defense ministers will meet for the first time since the Washington summit. And we will take forward the implementation of key decisions we made in Washington on bolstering our deterrence and defense, supporting Ukraine, and deepening our global partnerships. I look forward to chairing my first ministerial meeting as NATO Secretary General. And it will be the first time that our Indo-Pacific partners, Australia, Japan, New Zealand, and the Republic of Korea, join us in this format. As in the past, we've also invited the EU, a testament to our unique partnership. And I'm looking forward to welcoming Minister Umerov at a session of the NATO-Ukraine Council, where he will brief us on battlefield developments and Ukraine's urgent needs. Since taking office, I've made clear that strengthening our alliance, deterrence and defense is my top priority. We need to move further and faster to meet the growing threats we face. This requires more forces, capabilities and investment to meet the ambitious targets set by our defense plans. Expanded defense industrial capacity, more robust supply chains, and leveraging new technologies to ensure that we remain resilient across all domains. We have already made progress across all these lines of effort, but more really needs to be done. On defense industrial capacity, for example, we have made significant advances over the past 2 years on the production of munitions and the manufacturing of new ships, combat vehicles and jets. But we are still not producing enough, and the cost remains too high. So we must scale up together to produce more and at lower cost, and we must do so quickly. Defense investments are critical to defending our 1 billion citizens. They provide the equipment we need to deter and defend. They strengthen our technological edge, and they increase the interoperability of our forces. In other words, there cannot be strong defense without strong defense industry. Achieving this requires increased defense spending, firm orders, and they have to be long-term. I'm engaging with allies and have spoken to a number of big defense industry players on how best to deliver on this key priority. I also expect that ministers will greenlight a new NATO initiative to improve standardization. Standards underpin our ability to fight together, and better implementation of standards can help reduce costs of defense procurement. So this is essential work for NATO. Just 2 weeks ago, I made my first official trip as Secretary General. The destination was Kyiv. There, I reaffirmed that NATO stands shoulder to shoulder with Ukraine now and into the future. We are working, and with urgency, to deliver a new NATO command to coordinate security assistance and training for Ukraine. More support to build Ukraine's future forces. A financial pledge of at least 40 billion euros of military aid within a year. And initiatives to support Ukraine on its irreversible path to NATO membership. Early this week, I visited the new command that is being set up in Wiesbaden, Germany, where I met with staff who will be coordinating international security assistance to Ukraine. Work has started, and we expect the command to become fully operational in the coming month. This will enable allies to provide more coordinated and consistent support for Ukraine for the long term. On the financial pledge, I'm delighted to report that we are firmly on track to delivering the 40 billion pledged for the coming year as agreed in Washington. I can announce today that NATO allies committed 20.9 billion euros in military assistance to Ukraine during the first half of 2024. and allies are on track to meet their commitments for the rest of the year. So the message is clear. NATO is delivering for Ukraine, and we will continue to do so. Defense ministers will also review the status of NATO's current operations and missions in Kosovo and Iraq. The situation in the Western Balkans remains concerning, with secessionist threats in Bosnia and Herzegovina, a fragile security situation in Kosovo, and little progress made in the EU-facilitated Belgrade-Pristina dialogue. Russia is also seeking to undermine democracies in the region with cyber and hybrid threats, including disinformation using internal vulnerabilities to sow divisions. For over 2 decades, KFOR has maintained a safe and secure environment for all people in Kosovo and freedom of movement. NATO's commitment to KFOR remains strong today. And in the Middle East, at the request of Iraqi authorities, we have broadened the scope of our support for Iraq's security institutions. And we continue our engagement through NATO Mission Iraq to promote security and stability. Finally, I'm looking forward to exchanging views on the current global security situation with our Indo-Pacific partners and the EU. The growing alignment of authoritarian actors like China, Russia, North Korea, and Iran is undermining stability in the Euro-Atlantic and in the Indo-Pacific regions. In this more interconnected world, it is vital that we tackle our shared security challenges together. The expanded presence at the NATO table tomorrow demonstrates our commitment to working with our like-minded partners to defend our values and interests. We are particularly looking to increase cooperation in the areas of innovation, supply chain, and defense industrial production. And with that, I'm ready to take your questions.
Thank you. We'll start with Interfax. Third row.
Thank you, Farah. Secretary General, News Agency Interfax Ukraine, Irina Sumer. Today, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky announced in the Verkhovna Rada, you already know what I'm talking about, that first point of his victory plan is an invitation for NATO membership, while the real membership can wait for a future. What will be your thoughts on this? Thank you.
Well, clearly, the victory plan we discussed. We are also discussing it with allies. It will no doubt also be on the table this week when, of course, we have on Thursday the meeting between Ukraine and NATO on Thursday night with the defense ministers. As you know, at the NATO summit, allies agreed that Ukraine's path to membership is irreversible. And Ukraine is closer to NATO than ever before. We have the comprehensive assistance package. We are establishing a NATO command. I just spoke about it, and SETU being founded now in Wiesbaden. There we will coordinate and provide security assistance and training for Ukraine. We have agreed on the pledge, the 40 billion, and we are on track on delivering. And of course, many allies have signed bilateral security agreements with Ukraine. So the work we are doing together is making Ukraine stronger, more interoperable with NATO, and better prepared than ever to join our alliance. And I believe that all this work clearly constitutes a bridge to NATO membership. Ukraine will join the alliance, of course, when the time is right. And we will discuss, of course, also this item in the Zelensky victory plan.
Okay, we'll go to Ukrainian News Agency, National News Agency of Ukraine.
Thank you for the floor. Dmitro Shkurko, National News Agency of Ukraine. We have confirmed reports that Russia and North Korea concluded some kind of new agreement which not about only supply of weapons, but also to sending troops to the combat. Do you have such information? And do you observe some kind of, does NATO observe some kind of logistical operations in supporting such a move? And what is NATO reaction to that dangerous development? Thank you.
I cannot confirm these reports, but obviously they are concerning. What we do know is that North Korea is helping to fuel Russia's war effort against Ukraine. And we strongly condemn the, let's say, deepening military cooperation between Russia and North Korea. But we at this stage cannot confirm the reports you were mentioning.
Okay, over to Fats, please. Third row.
Thanks a lot. Thomas Kutschka, Frankfurter Allgemeine Zeitung, Secretary.
Guten Tag.
Yes, guten Tag. Secretary General, I have two questions. The first one, more than 2 years ago, Ukraine applied for NATO membership, but this application has never been taken on in the NATO, the North Atlantic Council or in other fora. Do you intend to change that and to have a discussion on the proposal itself? And the second question on the financial pledge. I take it that the 40 billion will be met this year, but of course the pledge in DC has been for the next year, so depending on how you count between the two summits or for the 12 months of 2025. Are allies also on track to meet the 40 billion for this period of time?
Well, clearly what allies agreed on your second question is a first pledge for 40 billion, but also the clear intent to continue to provide this. And the 40 billion was based on the fact that when you aggregate together the support which was given to Ukraine in, let's say, 2022 and in 2023, that you would basically come to this figure of 40 billion in support. That is basically the reason behind the 40 billion. But that is an explicit decision which has to be taken later, but there is the clear intent because we want to support Ukraine also for the long term. We are in this for the long haul if that is necessary. And Russia has to understand this, that we will not let go of this, and that we will not leave Ukraine alone. On your first question, it is my firm belief that one day Ukraine will be a member of NATO, and I will applaud when that day comes. It's also very clear that Putin or Russia have no say in this, no vote, no veto. They cannot influence that discussion. And then obviously it is up to the allies to discuss amongst themselves how to take this forward. But the fact that we are doing all this work on improving the interoperability of Ukraine with NATO, not only the money but also the training and the other programs we are running currently with Ukraine as allies, but also, of course, the individual commitments allies made in terms of their security agreements with Ukraine. This all is basically making sure that Ukraine is ready, stands ready when the day comes when NATO membership is possible. But I cannot today now exactly sketch out what that path will be. But I am absolutely confident that in the future Ukraine will join us.
Okay, we'll go to Ansa, second row, please.
Thank you, Secretary General Mattia Bagnoli, ANSA, the National Italian News Agency. On the pledges, one point, there seems to be uneasiness amongst allies on the burden sharing regarding Ukraine, because some allies could do more, apparently. Do you share that assessment? And secondly, on Middle East, it is not formally on the agenda, but could become sort of the elephant in the room, as if the situation deteriorates, it could have an impact on the overall security of the alliance. So do you have anything to add on that point? Thank you.
Yeah, on the first point, of course, we call upon all allies to meet their commitments. And overall, we are now in a good place for the first half year, and we think we can get there for the full year. I'm not going to release exactly what type of amount of money each country is doing, but internally we are completely transparent about that, because that is important also for allies amongst themselves to hold the other accountable and saying, hey, we are doing more, you are doing not enough, could you please step up? But as a whole, we are above the 20 billion, we are at 20.9 billion. On the Middle East, as my predecessor said, we cannot solve everything in the world. And this is, of course, a highly worrying situation which is now taking place in Gaza, in Israel and Lebanon. We know that allies are on an hour-to-hour basis trying to navigate the crisis. Obviously, we talk about it amongst ourselves, but it is not an issue on the agenda because in the end, NATO is a transatlantic partnership. Obviously, there is a link to NATO through what we are doing in Iraq to make sure that our people there helping the Iraqi government to build the Iraqi armed forces and to do everything Iraq has asked us to do, that they are safe and can work as good as possible and as safe as possible.
Okay, Wall Street Journal, please.
Thank you very much. Secretary General Dan Michaels, Wall Street Journal. Two questions. With the AP4, what do you expect to accomplish at the meeting? And separately, you mentioned about NATO standards. NATO's been working for decades to standardize. It has lots of standards and doesn't follow them. Why do you think you can make progress now when you haven't in the past? Thank you.
Well, on the first question, of course, it's extremely positive that these 4 countries are participating more and more with NATO allies because of the simple fact that security threats in the Indo-Pacific, of course, have a link to what is happening here, and you cannot simply divide the world. And now the question is how to deepen that partnership. And some of the things we are looking at for this week is to discuss how we can work together on industry production, how we can work together on innovation, how we can learn from each other more generally, so that we really deepen that partnership. That will, of course, has started before, but it is important that not only the meeting is the message, but that there is more and more content to that relationship. And when you look at the individual partners, Australia, New Zealand, Japan and South Korea, what they are adding already, also bilaterally with allies in NATO, is really considerable. The second question, the standards, you're absolutely right. This is not easy, but it is quite crucial because there is a link to innovation, there is a link to industry, there is also a link, therefore, to our deterrence and defense. And I'm absolutely convinced, of course, Ukraine, crucially up there as a main priority. But when you talk about defense and deterrence, we have to get industrial production going. We have to explain to companies why they can put in extra shifts, can build extra production lines. And therefore, we need to basically use every lever we have. And standardization will help here. Also, of course, in a situation in which NATO countries have really to go to war, if that would happen. Hopefully not. That you know that you're totally interoperable and that the standards are there. But you're right, it's not easy, but this is something I have come to the view over the last couple of years, but also in the first couple of weeks here, that more and more allies understand that this is urgent. And we cannot any longer continue as we did by basically being too slow on standardization. That's why I believe that this week we will take some decisions on that.
Fuji TV, please.
Thank you very much, Secretary General. Fuji Television Yamagishi from Japan. Also the question about the IP4, why do you think it is necessary now to meet those countries at this timing? And also, are you planning to reach any joint statement or declaration or any other agreement at the end of the meeting? Thank you.
Well, what we aim to do, basically, and probably we will then bring that out in press releases, etc. And also, I think the 4 partners will clearly speak with you and other representatives of the media. But it is important that we take that we start to sketch out what the next step should be in terms of building that relationship between the 4 partners in the Indo-Pacific, Australia, New Zealand, Japan, and South Korea, and NATO allies. When you are from Japan, and Japan, for example, but this is the same for the other 3. You are a long-standing partner. This is not new. Yes, okay, since a couple of years, leaders participate in NATO summits, and this will be the first time defense ministers or high officials participating in a NATO defense ministers meeting. But why is this logical? Because Japan, for example, and NATO, we share the same values. We face many of the same challenges. You have shown extremely strong solidarity with Ukraine. You have contributed substantially to NATO's Ukraine fund. Of course, we share concerns about China's heavy military buildup. So on all these issues already, also bilaterally between allies, but also NATO and Japan, we are working. And again, I could say the same for New Zealand, South Korea and Australia, with maybe different points of emphasis, but generally that this relationship is longer in the making. It's not just happening a couple of years ago, starting and now. But it is important that we take it to the next step, I believe, because there are so many opportunities. No, I must say, my background was in the EU, as you know, and we produced endless amounts of statements. But my experience is that statements are not more important, is that you come to the same page, that you, when you get out of the meeting, you all feel that there is this added benefit. And I'm absolutely convinced that when you will speak to the Japanese minister leaving the meeting, that he will sense, because of all the input Japan already has given to the whole process, that this is very useful.
Okay, Deutsche Welle next, please.
Thank you very much, Secretary General Alexandra von Nahm, Deutsche Welle, Germany's international public service broadcaster. Thank you. Following up on what my colleague just asked, what kind of message do you want to send to Beijing by hosting the ministers from the Indo-Pacific partner countries here in Brussels? And one more clarification maybe on Zelensky's victory plan. Do you fully support this plan, and how do you see the path forward? Thank you.
Yeah, well, on the victory plan, this is clearly Ukraine's victory plan, which we, of course, take note of. We will discuss. There are many items on that agenda which we will have to really deepen out, understand what is behind it. This is something which will take place behind closed doors, also with allies. So I will not comment on every element in the plan, but it is of course a strong signal from Zelensky and his team that they designed this plan, that they are now taking it forward. That doesn't mean that I here can say I support the whole plan. That would be a bit difficult because there are many issues, of course, you have to understand better, and you will have maybe some different views on particular aspects of the plan. But that doesn't say that we are not standing squarely behind Ukraine in making sure that Putin is not getting his way and that Ukraine prevails in this war with Russia. Yes, then on the Indo-Pacific, there is a clear sign of this deepening cooperation for a reason, and that is, yes, for example, you mentioned China. Yeah, China and Iran, but also in the region North Korea, they are fueling Russia's war of aggression. So that is a clear concern to NATO allies, but also to the four partners in the Indo-Pacific. They are, the four of them, challenging, obviously, security, both here in the Euro-Atlantic, but also, again, in the Indo-Pacific. And as I said, what happens here or in the Pacific directly influences what happens in the other part of the world. So therefore, you need to work together. This week, I think we will take work forward on how we can support Ukraine. We will discuss, as I said, new technologies and industry, probably also focusing somewhat more on artificial intelligence. Countering disinformation is a big item on our agenda. And of course, cyber defense. This is an issue we are all confronted with. So we are really determined to take that work forward. It is not against China or any other one country in the world, but clearly also China itself is a decisive enabler of what's happening in Ukraine, supporting Russia's war effort by sanction circumvention, by dual use. That has an impact, of course, also on China's standing in the world. But this partnership with the AP4 is not only about China. It is a broader partnership acknowledging that our two regions are interconnected.
Okay, we'll go to the lady in the third row. White jacket, yes.
Lirdona Gashik, Kosovo, Pristina, based on Kosovo. Thank you very much. What is your views on Russian influence on the Western Balkans, including along the administrative boundary line, and the role of the KFOR as police of Kosovo? Those days has said the Serbian gendarmerie has been near the border in the Mirdare. And I wanted to know your views on the importance of KFOR at this critical juncture for Kosovo security. Thank you very much.
KFOR is there and will stay. So that on your last point. And more generally, let's not be naive. Russia is, as we know, and we can see, and you can see, is seeking to undermine democracies in the region. We know for a fact that cyber and hybrid threats are absolutely there, and you are confronted with them, and disinformation is there. And we know that they try to use the internal vulnerabilities to sow the division and therefore make it more difficult. For example, for Pristina and Belgrade to get to some sort of discussion. For other parts of the region to make sure that they prevent secessionist movements to move forward. This is what Russia is always doing, trying to steer difficulty. And what we have to do is remain calm and focused. And KFOR is doing that. NATO is doing that. I know that our partners on the Western Balkans are doing it. I was so happy that you had the meeting in Berlin. I think it was on Monday or Tuesday with Olaf Scholz and others in the German administration. So that's all testimony that, yes, they are trying to interfere in the Western Balkans, the Russians, but we will not let ourselves be deflected by that. We will stay concentrated on this.
Okay, thank you. We'll go to AFP at the back there.
Thank you, Olivier Beau from AFP. Secretary General, on military spending, you said 2% is not enough. So I was wondering if you would ask the allies to raise the target maybe to 2.5%. Formally, are you going to make a proposal on that? And secondly, on the victory plan, again, I understood you don't want to comment on it, but do you think it's a good plan? Will NATO help Ukraine to implement it?
Well, the plan has many aspects and many political and military issues we really need to hammer out with the Ukrainians to understand what is behind it, to see what we can do, what we cannot do. But in the meantime, we will continue massive military aid moving into Ukraine. Russia has to understand we will keep on doing that as long as they continue the war effort. The war is at this moment having a considerable impact on Russia when we look at the many casualties every day, even if they make some small progress now in the east. So on all of this, this is something we really have to take forward.
Okay, we'll have.
Yes, and on military spending, good question, but we are not going to this week discuss what the target should be. So first of all, since 2014, we moved up, since the Wales discussion, to the 2%. Even if you would take USA out of the numbers, the rest of NATO, including Canada, is now as a whole at 2%. That is a considerable success. When you compare that to where we were in 2014, when only the UK, the US and Greece was at 2%. So from 3 countries we moved to 23 countries, still 9 allies, not at 2, but as a whole, without the US, on 2%. I'm convinced, everybody in this building, and I think everybody in NATO, that 2% will not be enough if long-term we want to make sure that we remain our deterrence and our defense at the level which is necessary. But we will have to have that discussion amongst allies, what that means in terms how, as an alliance as a whole, we will set the targets. And I don't think it is helpful if I would here, out of the air, come up with a number.
Okay, one final question to Yonhap.
Thank you. Binna Chung from Yonhap News Agency, South Korea.
Hello, good to see you.
Thank you for the floor. Follow-up question on North Korea regarding sending troops to Russia. You said that you cannot confirm yet. So are you already in contact with the Korean government to verify and share information on this matter? And if it is verified, do you personally think that it is time for countries, for example, particularly South Korea, to step up its support to Ukraine? Thank you.
Well, again, we do not have reports confirming this, but of course it is highly worrying. And even if it is not true, North Korea is already supporting the war effort. I mean, maybe not with troops, we do not know for sure, but they are, with their partnership with Russia and China and Iran, they are helping. And by the way, Russia is also paying for this, maybe not in money, but they don't get this support for free. They have to deliver knowledge and insights and innovation to their partners, so that is a two-way street, which is not always beneficial to Russia. South Korea itself, I mean, of course, North Korea is a big issue for you and for all of us, that's absolutely clear. But you are really helping a lot, also with the war effort, but also in general with supporting allies to make sure that we have access to the latest and high-end technologies and industrial output your proud country is producing, and I really want to thank you for that. And this is in almost every aspect of the military endeavor. We know that South Korea has excellent offers, and you are able to produce them at high speed, acceptable cost, can always be cheaper, but so far you're doing fine. And that is important. And you see now that our partnership with Seoul has deepened. I think that your political and practical support to Ukraine, also through